Thanks for tuning in to this third hour of the Elias Makos Show. And a shout out to all of you who've got the day off for your stat holiday for the Canada Day long weekend. Now, over the weekend, of course, not only was it Canada Day, but it was moving day for a lot of people. The housing crisis made this year's moving day a hard one for many. In Parc-Extension, community organizers say they've seen a rise in rents and they've seen a rise in evictions, with many long-term residents simply not being able to afford to continue living in the neighborhood. With more on this, let's go to Mohammad-Afaaq Mansoor, the community organizer at the Parc-Extension Action Committee. Mohammad-Afaaq, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So what did you see this weekend in Parc-Ex?
Well, this weekend there was a moving day, and the story is not so much what happened this weekend, but what happened before and what's going to happen after. So we are currently going through a housing crisis. This means July 1st is that much harder for a lot of families, low-income families, even middle-class families who have a hard time looking for a new place. The city said some 100 people were without a shelter on July 1st, but what this number doesn't include is the number of people who move into inadequate housing because it's the only one they could find. Sometimes they have to go into smaller units for the size of their family, so a family of 5 would share a one-bedroom, and sometimes they have to go into places where it's a high rent and they'll use most of their income to pay their rent, but they need to find a shelter. And in Parc-Extension, we're seeing yearly the rents have gone high. A neighborhood once identified by its low-income rents for newcomers. It was always a welcome neighborhood for immigrants, and now it's losing that identity because rents are going high and it's no longer affordable for so many newcomers and immigrant communities.
Well, let's talk about that identity, which, as a child of Greek immigrants, Parc-Ex in the 60s, a lot of Greeks in the neighborhood. And then I've always looked at Parc-Ex as the place to go if you want to know, the immigration story of Montreal, right? So it always had that, right? That was the affordable place where immigrants would go. What does it mean if Parc-Ex loses that, its affordability? What does that mean for immigrants and newcomers?
Well, it just means that it's no longer going to be a community that welcomes immigrants. Like you said, there's been a Greek community here present for so many decades, and there's still a big Greek community here, even though there are newer communities now like the South Asian community, and it's been a perfect cohabitation of mix of culture, and it's a community that is vibrant by its diversity, so many cultures that come together. Every year it's here. We have the Greek Independence Day parade here. We have the Indian Pakistan Independence Day festivities. So this kind of identity is marked by newcomers coming here, making this their home because it is affordable to live. A lot of newcomers that come here don't come with have big pockets. They come here, it's their first home. It's not probably the cleanest or the best apartment, but it will do. And it gives them time to integrate, find their community, find their voice, and that's going to be lost. And you're talking about the Greek community. We still have a lot of elderly Greek people living here, and now they've been here for decades, and now so they pay a rent that is much lower, but now you see even them facing eviction, harassment from the landlords because landlords see a potential to charge such high rent, and these people who have been living here for decades are just a burden for them. They're no longer a profit incentive for them. So this vibrancy, this what community once had, is losing, and it's going to become like any gentrified neighborhood of the city where only a middle-class, professional class can live itself. And this poses the question is, if Parc-Ex is no longer a community that welcomes the newcomers, then where will it have happened?
Is there a story that sticks out to you from the last month, the lead up to moving day and this weekend?
Well, there are many stories. Like I said, we face from January to July. January is when eviction season starts till July, the moving dates. We see families that are coming at our offices because in desperation because the landlord told them to move out. I think, I'm trying to think of an individual case. I think of a family, of couple of children who've been living in, who had, I think, 3 children, if I'm not mistaken, who were being evicted out of their apartment. And, at first they thought, oh, it'll be easy. They'll look for another place. And they didn't want to, contested too much, okay, because the landlord wants to take it back for their family member. So it's a harder eviction to fight when the landlord wants to take back a unit for their family. But then they sort of search was so hard, and eventually they decided to contest it. I think they lost that case, and I think they had to find a unit that was for the family not big enough, but they still had to move, and they had to leave Parc-Extension. So these are just one of many stories we hear every year in Parc-Extension, and people are leaving, or people just can't afford to move into Parc-Extension.
We're with Mohammad-Afaaq Mansoor, community organizer at the Parc-Extension Action Committee. Mohammad-Afaaq, can you tell us what you believe are some common sense solutions that we could be doing right now to help this crisis?
Well, common sense solution, one thing is provide better protection for tenants who have a disproportionate sort of power imbalance when it comes to with negotiating with their landlords and dealing with their landlords, especially immigrant communities that have faced a lot of systemic barriers. So just power imbalance is just hard, and so like legal protection. So for the longest of time, we have called for better rent control in the province, including a rent registry. So it makes the rental market that more transparent for tenants looking to rent and knowing what the former rent was. So that rent control mechanism that does exist in legislation can easily be applied. There's also the type of housing we build. The province has not funded social housing, community housing at a level that is meeting demand for low-income families that cannot find anything in the private market. Well, public housing is the solution. Social housing, cooperative, or community-led housing. The funding isn't there. In Parc-Ex, there is a deficit. The wait list in Montreal, something 20,000. And so a massive investment in social housing, building type of housing that actually can help people low-income and newcomers while they're trying to find a foothold in the society and have a chance at social mobility.
Let's talk a bit about gentrification and how and its effects on the borough, because I've had people on this program and they'll make the case that done properly, gentrification leads to better outcomes in nicer places and nicer communities. And then I'm looking at just the location of Parc-Ex, and you see the encroachment that comes from neighboring communities. You got Milex, which seems be in a state of gentrification as well. And there's just a push right to more affordable areas. What are your thoughts on gentrification and how it's happening right now?
Well, you see, renewal is never a bad thing. We don't mind having better communities, and I don't think low-income immigrant communities deserve the monopoly on living in distressful areas. But I think the way gentrification works out is that it's a process where nicer immigrants are associated with people who can afford them, so higher middle-class, higher-income professionals, middle-class professionals. So the way we have envisioned sort of policy is that better does not go with lower income people. So this is this type of reason why it's like we don't want to prevent a bettering of neighborhoods, but the consequences of that is that it gets more unaffordable for lower income people. It gets more unaffordable for new immigrants. So that process in itself displaces community. Mm-hmm. Like I said, Parc-Ex has been an immigrant community and has not been associated with positive reviews of being a clean neighborhood, and there's been issues around cleanliness and everything. But at the end, I think it's better to keep it affordable so that that low-income people have a place to say and make it their own, and they themselves reappropriate that place and make it better in long term than having them dispossessed and outsiders coming in making better on their own image, and then you lose a community that was once a vibrant, diverse community and just becomes like any other gentrified community. So I don't know if you understand what I say. It's like you need it's not what we want, but you need in some places communities that are able to bring in people that are going through hard times and that need a place to grow. And Parc-Ex was that community. So and I think at some point we need to change the paradigm where cleanliness and beautiful parks and bike paths are not associated with gentrified communities, and it's
everywhere.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
So let me just wrap up with this one. There was a worry that people would go homeless this July 1st, this moving day. Did you see that? Did you see people who are now homeless as of July 1st?
As of July 1st, I think the city said there was 107 people that were families taking care of their emergency services. Mm-hmm. In Parc-Extension, I have to still do follow-ups, but I don't know exactly how many people were at housing. But like I said, that what the number hides is that people are necessarily homeless, but they are living in places that are no longer inadequate for them. Either they're far away from their schools, either they're far away from where they work, they're far away from their community, either they're paying rent that's too high, either they're moving into a place that has only one bedroom for a family of multiple children. So that's like the hidden aspect of it that official numbers can't capture in this sort of housing crisis. So luckily we have these emergency studies, and the city does work to rehouse homeless people to make sure there's the least amount of homeless people. But like I said, the housing crisis is not just measured how many people are without housing on July 1st. It's also measured on how long-term where people are going to live, and can they afford it, and how much of an impact it's going to have on their livelihood.
Mohammad-Afaaq, we got to leave it there. I want to thank you so much for your time this morning.
Well, thank you for having me.
That is Mohammad-Afaaq Mansoor, community organizer at the Parc-Extension Action Committee.